So, hello everybody once again, and I'm really pleased to be here this evening, or at least my evening, with Derrick Broze from the Conscious Resistance Network, and also now the Freedom Cell Network. Derrick, since we were speaking with you, I think back in mid-July, I remember it was pretty hot here, so I know it was summertime. You've incorporated the Freedom Cell Network onto the Coeō platform. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been really great being able to work with Matt and everybody else from the Community Connector, the Coeō network, and we built the Freedom Cell Network website, which is now at freedomcells.org, on the same platform. And it's so people can come there if they hear from our ideas and interest in Freedom Cells and start their own groups. But it also connects to the larger Coeō platform, which connects to in a way to the larger platform that the Full Circle Project is on, and other groups as well. So it's really beautiful to see.
It is, and I've noticed as well that people are already kind of cross-pollinating, which is what we'd hoped for. So we've got people from Prepare for Change and Ubuntu now sort of meeting people from the Freedom Cell Network and the Full Circle Project. And just in the last week, I put our place here on the Freedom Cell Network, and I've had a group from Mexico and another group from the Pyrenees. They were in touch with me, so I think it's just really great the way that this is weaving people together across the globe, and it's only just starting, so the potential's enormous.
Absolutely, it's been really exciting time for me. This is actually the third interview in a week that I've done about freedom cells, and to me that's just showing the growing interest in the movement and the topic itself. So every time there's a new interview and a new video and the websites out there and the cross-pollination that you discussed, it just moves us, I believe, one step closer to creating a more prosperous, more free world where all people are able to thrive and grow in. And that really starts with first creating these tools as we have now, then propagating the message, putting it out there to the masses. And now I think we're at the point where education will continue to happen. That's going to be an ongoing project of helping people understand the importance of coming together in smaller groups to form larger networks that can compete with the current system and to create something more prosperous. But also, we're now at the stage of moving past education and actually building and implementing these ideas, taking them from just being on the web, but using the actual Coeō platform to connect and meet people in the real world, and from there start to build projects. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today, is how we can start taking the concepts of freedom cells into the real world and documenting that process for other people to see.
That's great. Tell me about the Freethinker House. I've seen a couple of videos you've done, but tell the rest of us about what's happening there.
Absolutely. So the Freethinker House is basically the name that we've given the house and the community center that the Houston Freethinkers activist community that I'm sure I mentioned before, that I've been involved with since 2010. We've had two past versions of Freethinker House. Basically, a couple of us will live together in a place and use all the living space outside of our rooms as public communal space, where we have a community library where people can come check out books and documentaries. We host documentary screenings. We have our regular Houston Freethinker meetings, potlucks, and using the outside space for gardening and anything else that we can use the space for that's going to provide something to the activist community, the artistic community here in Houston. And we just moved in 2 weeks ago to this new spot, and this is now the current version of the Freethinker House. And we decided, since we found this place that's really beautiful, it's a 3-bedroom house built in 1930 with lots of space and lots of outdoor space for us to grow and garden in, and it is a stepping stone for the eventual plan for some of us within the Freedom Cell to actually get land and build an intentional community around the ideas of freedom and the philosophy of agorism, and basically creating something new, building something new outside of the shell of the old. So this is kind of going to be the staging ground, the breeding ground, the launch pad for what freedom cells can be, at least in relation to what we're doing here in Houston. And the goal with this is, so we have the house, we have space outside that we are free to garden in and do whatever we want. We've put out 4 updates now. We put out the most recent one this morning, and we've been able to build 2 different garden beds now, and we started a medicine wheel, which is going to be a sacred spiritual spot as well as a spot for herbs. We've also put in some fresh flowers, and we're going to be doing vermiculture with worms. We've started composting, and more projects to come. And it's just, we're documenting that whole process to show people how easy it is to grow your own food, and also specifically growing things in relation to selling them in the local community. So we want to be able to find local markets and local restaurants that are going to be looking specifically for the greens and the crops that we're growing. So then we can have a source of income that is coming directly to us, to the house, returning back into our project, and also, for all intents and purposes, is untaxed and not going towards feeding the system that we don't support. And gardening is only going to be one aspect of it. We also have some other ideas how to make counter-economic activity, how to make money and reinvest that back in our community projects, and do it in ways that will either allow us to not use the Federal Reserve note, the US dollar at all, or at the least to take that money out of the hands of the government and more into our community, and allow us to continue building these projects. So as I said, we've been here for 2 weeks now. The gardening projects are going. We just had a potluck this weekend, and a 6-year anniversary of the Houston Freethinkers, and kind of a housewarming event, welcoming everybody to check out the space, and been doing weekly gardening for us it happens throughout the week, but an open gardening day every Sunday. And this is just the beginning for us, for at least for the next year, as we use this space to show what a freedom cell can do, how you can create value in your life and find ways to live outside the confines of the state and outside of those limitations and regulations. And again, take that everything we learn and move that towards actually starting intentional communities on land that we can own, as close as we can come to owning it. We still have to pay the state property taxes, unfortunately, so you never truly own your land just yet. But we'll get as close as possible within this current paradigm, instead of waiting for some utopia where the perfect day is going to exist, or believing that violence is the answer, or believing that voting for some new politician is going to change things radically. We're deciding to use freedom cells as a way to really change ourselves and to create something brand new. So the Freethinker House is really going to be important in that process. And we created a Facebook page, the Freethinker House, on Facebook, where you can follow all the updates, and the videos are coming out on the Conscious Resistance Network YouTube channel. And also we started a Patreon account, which allows people to sign up if they want to participate and support us on a monthly basis. They can sign up for as little as $1 a month, $5, or whatever they choose, and that money goes back into the projects. And we'll also be doing more specific kind of behind the scenes videos for those people who choose to support. But the goal is to become sustainable, so then eventually we don't need any outside help, and we really can create ways to empower ourselves as much as possible within the environment of the city of Houston, and show people that even in an urban environment this is possible.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really useful step to illustrate to others, Derrick, because often there's this idea about setting up an intentional community. It seems a long step, a long time for people to get from where they are in an urban environment to a rural one, and not necessarily what everybody wants or actually sees as the right way ahead. I like that it's happening in an urban situation. What do your neighbors make of your activities so far? What's been their response?
Well, so far we've been really lucky because our immediate neighbor is actually the landlord, and so he's very cool, helping with everything that we're doing, and so that's been great. He's asked to attend our meetings, and he said that he likes salad, so as long as we keep him fed with salad, he'll be satisfied. And we really did luck out and find a good place that there are no immediate neighbors. There's nobody living across the street. It's a big empty field. There's one house in the process of being built. And then there's some people kind of diagonally from us, but we've connected with them so far and met a couple of them, and everything's been good. We haven't had anybody have any issues, and we're really trying to, again, show that the importance of connecting to our communities and meeting your neighbors and getting out there and building those relationships and learning, what your neighbors might have, what resources or skills they might have, or maybe they want to be involved in some of the projects, or they have advice to offer, things like that. So we're really going to try to make this project as much about building relationships with our neighbors as it is about building, our own independence.
Very good. So when you say that you have an open day, like an open gardening day, then I assume you're inviting everyone along, not just members of the Freedom Cell Network, but anyone that's in the neighborhood, in that's passing, as it were. They're also welcome, no, to come and dip in.
Absolutely, yeah. We're actually trying to keep So 2 out of the 3 people here, this is one of the things that we're documenting in the update videos, is that 2 out of 3 of us we're our own bosses, you could say. We're entrepreneurs, where the other roommate has a full-time job at a place that, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's not really what he wants to do. And so part of that process is being able to document that change. So 2 of us are here quite often doing our own work, working on the garden, working on the Freedom Cell growth, and just doing things within this house. So we really want the house to also be an open space for people who are in the city of Houston who are coming through. So I think we put online Thursday through Sunday from 12 to 5. We're open, where people can come by and they can check out the books in the library, or they can just stop by and use the internet, or check out the garden and see what they have going on. But definitely every Sunday is an open house kind of garden day, where we've been making food every Sunday afternoon and just asking people to come in kind of early and before it gets too hot, because it's still warm here in Houston, and come do some garden work and learn whatever you can and contribute how you can. And also opening up the space that if somebody has a tree or a plant or something that they would like to grow, but they don't have the space in their current living situation, they can come here and find a spot in the Freethinker garden to plant that and tend to it, or we'll help tend to it as it grows.
So Derrick, this is more than just about creating food source at home, isn't it? There's more to Freedom Cells. Do you want to touch a little bit on some of the other things that you're developing?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So Freedom Cells definitely is a topic that can be, the concept that can be applied in multiple different ways. We are sort of focusing right now on the food aspect, because that's going to be one of the quickest, easiest ways to start creating independence in your own life. And I really stress that, because there are oftentimes, I come across people who sort of discount the idea of, or the power of gardening, community gardening, urban farming, in the sense that it doesn't really seem to be the most flashy, revolutionary type of activism you can think of. Some of these people, they think that in their minds that we need to see some sort of violent overthrow, or even if it's not violent, there needs to be some more direct change, and so they want to vote, or they want something that's immediate. But the truth is that the change that needs to take place is going to be one that is generational, and unfortunately we cannot change it within a week or within a day or a couple of years. It's going to take time, and that involves changing the culture. So Freedom Cells is also about trying to evolve and change the culture by building small knit groups that can come to each other's aid mutually, that can build together, that can grow food, can teach each other knowledge, whether that's philosophy, whether that's skills, sharing skills together, and then turning around and building more groups that can also do that same thing and creating this network that empowers each of us. So it does go beyond just food, but food is an important step towards independence. Some of the other ways that I've been trying to encourage people to think about this is like with the skills. Gardening is one skill, but maybe building a fire, having CPR lessons. Maybe there's knowledge that you want to gain, teaching each other other types of skills, or history or political philosophy. Taking that core group of people and using it to educate each other in any fashion that you believe. But also further down the line, I think that as we build these groups, there are some fears out there, I've noticed quite a bit, that people say, well, this is never going to be allowed to prosper very long. It's a great idea, but the government's going to come along and they're going to create some Waco situation. Here in the U.S. and in Texas, we have the Waco massacre in the 90s, where the U.S. government killed children and unarmed people and basically set their building on fire, and it was a private community. So people often have these fears of how are these things going to develop and how will it be allowed to exist. Freedom Cells, in my mind, starts with the community building. It starts with the evolving the personal development, and with the sort of softer side of building community gardens, building networks in your community, mutual aid support, whether that relates to health. We could do mental health support groups, but also down the line, as this network grows and we see more of these pockets of freedom-minded individuals, self-sustaining individuals, and those who are also thinking of individual liberation through collective action. As we see this grow through the Freedom Cell network, we will come to a point where we might decide, and I believe it will become necessary, to decide to use that same Freedom Cell structure to defend against violent agents of the state, whether that's police officers or other government agents, or just violent criminals in general. Being able to defend ourselves, I think, some people are more into firearms than others, but I think in general having some form of self-defense implemented within your Freedom Cell to protect you from all kinds of people, whether they're criminals involved in the government or criminals on the street, is advisable. And I do think, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the first interview, but the idea that we could come to a point where we use technology with apps like the Cell 411 app or the Freedom Cell Network website. We use these devices and this technology to communicate more directly with each other. And when it comes time to defending, say, your neighbor or somebody in your Freedom Cell, when their children are the state's trying to take away their children, maybe because they don't vaccinate or because they choose to smoke a plant, or they are homeschoolers, or they don't like their political views or whatever, you call in your Freedom Cell, and your Freedom Cell is able to come in and peacefully, non-violently resist and assert yourself and stop the child from being taken, or stop the officer from abusing that person, or stop the criminal from breaking into someone's house, whatever you may have, and being able to actually use that structure to defend ourselves. I do think that is something that we will see down the line, and it will become necessary, because there is some truth to those who say the state will never allow this to happen. That they're going to allow you to go up to a certain point, and then once you become thriving, or it gets noticed too much, or whatever they decide, that they will come eventually and try to either kill it with regulation, with taxes, or with police force. And maybe those are possibilities, and those outcomes may happen. Maybe that's the direction we're headed. Either way, we plan to document the entire process. I do think that peaceful action, community building, the fact that we've been able to build a community here in Houston over the last 6 years, that if something like that was to happen, then we could rally up more support, which is essentially more Freedom Cells, whether people realize it or not. We would call in all our supporters and say, we need you guys. We need you to come support us at this time of need. So you're thinking about using Freedom Cells for gardening, for teaching skills, for community defense, for education, for preparation for any type of emergency. Really, it's limitless potential, and it all decides on how you choose to use it. I mean, theoretically, somebody could form a Freedom Cell and call it something else, and have a group of 7, 8 people that meet every week and they read books, and then we'd call that a book club. But ultimately, it's still the same concept. It's a group of people coming together with common interests. We're simply taking that goal and gearing it towards, taking that idea and aiming it towards freedom, and trying to take as many actions as a group as we can to help us get there sooner. And the Freedom Cell is the vehicle that will allow us to get there.
Well, I think you've just managed to answer about 3 or 4 of the questions that were actually sent in to me earlier from the Full Circle. Most of them did revolve really about the concerns as to whether you were making yourself a target for the state in some way. But there's also the question here of could you explain a little bit about peer-to-peer groups and how that operates within the context that you're speaking about?
Sure. So the term peer-to-peer is something that has really been driven, as far as my knowledge, through the internet. We have, P2P is what it's often called, P2P downloads, where individuals connect to a network, which was originally like Napster in the early days of the internet. Some type of program. You all connect, and everybody uploads the files that they have, and then other individuals can connect to that same network and download those files. So it's kind of like it's not centralized into one person. Everybody's contributing one thing, and that is often what is known as peer-to-peer. And now we have a number of different technological tools that have that name, where it typically signifies that it's more of a community-sourced project. And by that, you think of crowdsourced, community-sourced. That means it's being sourced. The ideas are coming from our community, from the crowd, together, collectively. So that's what I think of when I think of peer-to-peer, is individuals voluntarily working together without top-down control. It doesn't mean that there won't be natural leaders within Freedom Cells, that certain people won't have specific knowledge in one area or a set of areas, and that won't be valuable. It just means when it comes down to decision making and to actually trying to share the skills, the idea is for it to be equal, that each of the peers involved in the Freedom Cell are able to equally contribute and to learn and grow from the process. So I think it just comes down to just fostering those relationships. When you really look at the way that most of us interact, whether you're in a rural or city environment, a lot of times we come across people, we walk right by them, we don't get to know them, we don't know our neighbors often. If your community is different, you may be the exception to this, but especially in America, a lot of us feel disconnected, and that I think is something that Freedom Cells is trying to change, is to build those peer-to-peer relationships by having communication, by learning to have self-reflection, self-healing, self-forgiveness, building yourself up, and at the same time building your brothers and sisters around you, building those strong relationships. So then when it comes time to actually do political action or building the next stage of the paradigm, we have created those strong peer-to-peer relationships, and we're able to more successfully do that. We're able to push past the human drama and also push past being divided by external forces. So ultimately, I think peer-to-peer is just that. It's simple. It's just people coming together, putting the barriers and the roadblocks aside and choosing to work directly together and building tools that can be easily replicated and shared with other groups of people. That's, I think, important as well. Things that can be modeled, created for one community, and then taken by another community and redone and added to and altered, made better. That's definitely an important part of this as well.
Yeah, I find that the exciting thing also about the aims of the Full Circle project, which really are very, very similar, on similar ground of bringing people together in their local neighborhoods and looking at their common concerns and then working out a wise and effective way to create change within their neighborhood and then sharing it with others, with like-minded others. So this, of course, is how we all build up the networks together. And what you're saying there about relationships is key, because when you take it through from relationships with your friends, your family, your neighbors, you eventually, I'm hoping that we end up in good relationship with those that currently are in the forces, the police, the military, even the politicians. Perhaps we can actually turn around this abusive relationship where many are in an abusive office and make it into one where, again, there's some kind of feasible relationship, where we're all reminded of really who we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Derrick, I also was interested to hear a little bit more about your own reporting and so on, which I know you've been doing for a number of years, and I also know that a number of Full Circle members and so on are posting often your articles. What's the latest there? What are you going to be looking at now?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you asked, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. For those who are interested in more of my journalism work, you can always go to Derrick Broze, which is just my full name altogether, .contently.com, and I always post all of my articles and my video reports there, and you can just bookmark that and keep up with them. But this Friday, I'll actually be headed back to North Dakota to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation for the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline. I was able to visit 2 months ago in late August, and I spent a week there, and it was really just a life-changing experience, and getting connected to the indigenous and native roots here in America, and further connecting to my own ancestry and my own desire to be close to that. Very powerful, and I was able to go out there and do a couple of interviews and put out some reports to document that. So it's been 2 months now that I've been gone, and I'm sure some of your audience is familiar with the situation and has seen it escalate over the last 2 months. Essentially where it's at now is that the Standing Rock Sioux and the supporters who are there, which now number in the 5,000 plus people camped out across the 3 different camps on the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation and on the land where the construction is supposed to take place. That camp has grown immensely, and the number of tribal nations who are supporting and now united for the first time in history in many cases is over 250, probably 300 now. We've had supporters from Norway, from all over the world, indigenous people and non-natives alike supporting. And it's just been a beautiful time of unity and prayer and power and ceremony. And it's been truly contrasted by the growing militarization of the police that's taking place in that situation. We've seen in the last 2 weeks about 35 people arrested, and the police are now showing up in what they call the Bearcat military-style Humvees and tank-like vehicles. There are some sightings of what looks like the LRAD sound cannon that they used to break up protests. People have been pepper sprayed and dog attacks and all kinds of things. But specifically the last 2 weeks, it's really picked up now that the Standing Rock Sioux have, for all intents and purposes, lost the legal battle. The courts ended up siding with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Standing Rock Sioux basically say that they were not properly interviewed or asked about this, consulted about the project before it took place, and that it's put sacred burial sites and just sacred ceremony sites to them, historical sites. It's put them at risk and already destroyed some of them. So they've been trying to fight for a while, and now they're at the point where it's really just, there was a call just last week for a month of global direct action for those who are concerned with what this project means to the Missouri River, what this project means for the future. And also, one of the things I've been stressing to people recently is that this fight, for me, I realized this as soon as I went the first time, and it's become even more apparent since I've left, is that the fight against the pipeline, or what appears to be the fight against the pipeline, is actually a much larger fight, and what I view is sort of a clash of worldviews. On one side, you have the indigenous, native side, worldview, and the supporters and those who kind of align with that, which tends to view the world from what is known as the seventh generation perspective, thinking about the actions you take today and how they will affect 7 generations forward, taking care of the earth so that the 7 generations can continue to prosper. You have that mentality on one side, and you have this other worldview that could be termed maybe a modern worldview or a Western worldview, or just a consumerist worldview. And it's this living in the now, and not in any sort of enlightened, empowered sense, but really just an egotistical, irrational, just thinking about what's going to make money now or feel good right now, or not thinking about how the decisions that are being made now are going to affect the earth and future generations. And I think that's really what's being played out here, is this clash of ideas and of worldviews, and whether or not the pipeline is completed, which it's all but completed except for in the section of Iowa where there are farmers resisting it because of eminent domain, government stealing the land, and in North Dakota where the Standing Rock Sioux are opposing it. There's billions of dollars behind this pipeline. There's security forces and police willing to pepper spray people to make sure it gets done. I think that the fight is valuable, and I plan to be there and to document and to do live Facebook videos through anti-media and activist posts and also Mint Press News. But I also think that more than likely this pipeline will get built, but the fight will not go away. It's a very difficult situation, and as you were saying a moment ago, hopefully things evolve in the sense that we can get police officers and other people in positions of authority to recognize that we are them and that we're on the same side, and to stand together rather than trying to create or perpetuate this mentality of us versus them. And in the same instance, I really don't want to perpetuate that mentality, but it's difficult to see the situation playing out in Standing Rock without conflict, because there's 5,000 people out there who are dedicated to stopping this, and hundreds of them mobilize every time to go try to block the pipeline every time there's construction. The police are stepping up their efforts as well. So it's difficult, and I just send out prayers and support. I'm going to be going there this coming Friday, the 22nd, and I'll be there through the 27th. I will be doing live reporting, and you can follow me through the Conscious Resistance. I'm sure I'll be posting it there as well. And anyone who wants to keep up with those updates, please do, because this is a very important story. And wherever you stand on the issue, we can without a doubt agree that the Deadstream corporate media is not reporting the facts about the case whenever they do. Most of the time they completely ignore the situation. But when they do report it, it's typically biased. And now it's moved to a situation where journalists like Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! And celebrities and the filmmaker are all facing felony charges and possible jail time for simply doing their job. So I'm going into the situation with the awareness that that's a possibility, especially because I'll be working with some big Facebook pages to broadcast this message to millions of people. It's a possibility that they might see that and try to decide to shut down my feed and maybe arrest me. But it's a worthy venture to do. It's a worthy story to cover, and as an activist, it's something that I care deeply about, and fear of arrest is not enough to stop me from going. So I hope anybody who wants to keep up with that will follow my work.
Definitely, Derrick. We'll make sure that all those links are posted below, and obviously it's very valuable to have balanced reporting in all these areas, and particularly as you said, it's quite remarkable. There's huge community there that is being organized. These are the people that understand most about community and what's required and how to organize themselves in, an area that has no services, and also just drawing attention, as you know, to the bigger picture and how many crimes against humanity really that we're currently facing, and indeed crimes against the future generations. I feel very strongly there that we're really fighting for the world for our children. So Be very, very interested to hear your reporting, and be brave and stay safe. And we'll hope to catch you for some further updates just as soon as you're back in Houston. And thank you, Derrick, for all that you're doing, you and your team there, and I'm sure it's bringing a lot of motivation for people to be able to replicate the Freedom Cells and similar groups wherever they are. So many, many thanks and good luck with everything, and really we'll look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you very much.